A company you have never heard of just outsold Tesla. Globally. Not in one country, not in one quarter, globally. For the entire year. Their best-selling car costs $13,800. That is less than 3 months of rent in most major cities. For a brand new electric car. With a warranty that actually works. And right now, every car executive from Detroit to Stuttgart to Tokyo is staring at a spreadsheet and quietly losing their mind. Let us talk about BYD. Build your dreams. That is what BYD stands for. Not a marketing slogan, the actual company name. BYD started in 1995 in Shenzhen, China. Not a glamorous beginning. No Silicon Valley garage, no famous founder on a magazine cover. Just a 29-year-old chemist named Wang Chuanfu, a small factory, and 20 workers making rechargeable batteries for Nokia phones. By hand. Doing what Japanese factories were already doing with robots, but doing it with human fingers because they could not afford the machines. Everyone assumed this was temporary. A small operation going nowhere. Wang Chuanfu had other ideas. By 2003, BYD had captured 40% of the global rechargeable battery market. 40%. No robots, no international brand. No one in the West paying attention. Then Wang decided he wanted to build cars. He had zero experience in the car industry. Zero. He had never designed a car. Never worked in a car factory, never even visited one. He simply bought a bankrupt Chinese car company for $73 million and figured it out as he went. In 2008, Warren Buffett, the most famous investor in the world, the man who spent his entire career avoiding technology companies, invested $232 million in BYD. Think about that. The man who said no to Amazon and Google said yes to a Chinese battery company making cheap cars. What could possibly go wrong? Now, here is what most people miss. BYD did not rise alone. The whole story behind China's electric vehicle dominance is not about one company. It is about a plan. A very long, very patient, very expensive plan that the Chinese government started building 20 years ago. In 2009, Beijing made a decision that would change the entire car industry. The internal combustion engine, the kind that runs on gasoline, that was the West's game. Japan had Toyota, Germany had BMW and Mercedes, America had Ford and General Motors. China was 50 years late to that race, and everyone knew it. Chinese roads were full of foreign brands, but electric vehicles, that was a completely blank page. A new race. No country had won it yet. No brand had 100 years of loyalty behind it. China decided it would not be late to this one, so the government went all in. Tax breaks for anyone who bought an electric car. Direct subsidies for companies making them. Billions of dollars poured into battery research. Charging stations built across the country at a speed that made the United States look like it was still debating whether to plug in. China did not just build cars. They built the entire system around cars. One company that came out of this era is CATL, a Chinese battery manufacturer that most people outside the industry have never heard of. CATL today controls almost 38% of the entire global electric vehicle battery market. Not 5%, not a small slice, 38%. They make the batteries that go inside Teslas. They make the batteries inside BMWs, inside Volkswagens, inside cars sold by European and American brands that proudly display their own logos. The West was busy designing the outside of the car. China owned the engine inside all of them. And then there are the prices. BYD makes a small electric car called the Seagull. It is modern. It drives well. It has a decent range. You would not be embarrassed to own one. The price is under $10,000 for a new car, electric, with a warranty. BYD also makes a hybrid called the Chin L. It gets the equivalent of 81 miles per gallon and can travel over 1,300 miles before you need to stop. The price is $13,800. The Toyota Prius, which does roughly the same thing, costs $27,000 in the United States. Same roads, same concept, half the price. Less than half. For years, the West dismissed all of this. Cheap cars mean cheap quality. They will never pass safety standards. Nobody serious will buy them. The same things people said about Japanese cars in the 1970s. We all know how that ended. From 2018 to 2023, Chinese electric vehicle exports grew by 1,016%. That is not a typo. 1,000% growth in 5 years. That is not a trend. That is a wave that spent a decade building in the middle of the ocean, invisible until it hit the shore. Then the ships started arriving in European ports. In 2024, global trade in electric cars jumped by 20%. China was responsible for 40% of all electric vehicle exports worldwide. Nearly 1.25 million cars shipped out of Chinese ports in a single year. Europe was the first major market to feel it. Walk around Oslo or Amsterdam or Brussels today. You will see BYDs parked on the street. You will see MG cars, which used to be a classic British brand before a Chinese company bought it. You will see Polestar, which sounds Swedish because it is branded Swedish, but it is owned by a Chinese company and manufactured in China. The BYD Dolphin went on sale in Europe for $21,500. Tesla's cheapest car costs $44,000. Same roads, same charging stations, double the price. Chinese electric vehicle brands held 1% of the European car market in 2019. By late 2023, it was 8%. The European Commission warned it could reach 15% by 2025. That warning turned out to be optimistic for Europe. Then came the earnings reports. Volkswagen announced it would close factories in Germany for the first time in its 87-year history. Stellantis, which owns Jeep, Fiat, Peugeot, and Chrysler, reported a 70% collapse in profits. Ford posted massive losses on its electric vehicle division. Mercedes cut its profit forecast. Then cut it again. This was not a recession. Demand for cars did not disappear. A company from Shenzhen was simply making a comparable product for half the price. And by the time anyone in Europe or America understood what was happening, the market share was already gone. So the West did what it always does when it is losing a fair competition. It made the competition unfair. In May 2024, the United States government announced a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. That means if a Chinese car costs $20,000 to build and ship, the American importer now has to pay an additional $20,000 in tax just to bring it through the border, effectively doubling the price overnight. Europe followed in October 2024. The European Union added new tariffs on top of the ones it already had. BYD faced an additional 17%. Geely faced 18.8%. SAIC, which owns MG, faced 35.3%. Stack those on top of the existing 10% import tax, and you are adding enormous costs to every car coming in. Germany voted against the European tariffs. Germany, home to Volkswagen and BMW, both of which produce millions of cars inside China and sell them globally, voted against punishing Chinese car imports. Make of that what you will. Germany was outvoted. China did not panic. China did not beg for negotiations. China retaliated calmly and surgically. Investigations into European wine exports, new barriers on French cognac, tariffs on large European cars. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet reminder that trade works in both directions. And then China did something smarter than all of it. They went around the walls. BYD started building a car factory in Hungary. A partner began production in Turkey. Chery started manufacturing in Spain. The logic was simple. If you build the car inside Europe, it is not an import. No import, means no tariff. The wall was built to stop Chinese cars from entering. It said nothing about Chinese factories.
While the politicians were congratulating themselves on the tariffs, BYD commissioned the world's largest car-carrying ship. A vessel designed specifically to move electric cars across oceans. 30,000 cars per voyage. One ship, 30,000 cars. By 2025, BYD had more than doubled its exports. Mexico saw a 2,367% increase in Chinese electric vehicle deliveries in a single month. Southeast Asia was flooded. South America was flooded. Every market without a tariff wall saw Chinese cars arrive in massive numbers. Then CATL announced 5-minute charging technology. 5 minutes to charge a car for 320 miles of driving? Not a future concept. Not a promise, a product. In 2025, BYD overtook Tesla as the world's largest electric vehicle seller, globally. The walls went up. The flood found a different path and kept coming. Here is where the numbers become real people. In Wolfsburg, Germany, where Volkswagen has been the center of the local economy since 1937, where the same families have worked at the same factory for 3 generations, the threat of closure is no longer hypothetical. Engineers with decades of experience are now doing what nobody in that city expected to do: updating their resumes. In Ellesmere Port in England, the local car plant nearly shut down in 2024. It survived only because the government stepped in with financial support. How many times can a government do that before it has to ask a harder question? In Detroit, Ford lost $4.7 billion on its electric vehicle division in a single year. Not 47 million, 4.7 billion. Gone. General Motors canceled its most affordable electric car, then brought it back, then rethought its entire strategy. Nobody had a clear answer. These companies did not fail because they were careless or slow. They walked into a competition against a country that had been preparing for exactly this moment for 20 years. The outcome in hindsight was almost written in advance. Meanwhile, in Thailand, Chinese brands now hold over 80% of the electric vehicle market. In Brazil, BYD is building factories. In Vietnam and Indonesia and Malaysia, ordinary families are buying modern electric cars at prices that simply do not exist at any Western dealership. For those buyers, this is not a geopolitical story. It is not about trade wars or industrial policy. It is just a good deal. And that brings us to the question that no politician in Washington or Brussels or Tokyo wants to answer out loud. If the tariff walls were not there, would most ordinary people in the West simply choose the cheaper car? Probably yes. This story is not really about electric cars. It is not even really about China. It is about what happens when a country decides to win something, decides it at the highest level, commits to it for 2 decades, and then quietly does exactly what it said it would do while everyone else was busy assuming tomorrow would look like yesterday. The West built its car industry over 100 years of gasoline engines' brand loyalty and the comfortable belief that being first meant being safe forever. China found the part of the map that was still blank and planted a flag there while nobody was watching. There is an old saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The West is still looking for a good spot.